What's up, everybody? Happy Tuesday to everyone. We got a good show for you tonight. The Diddy is here. He's going to join us to break down this Eagles draft. My goodness, Howie Roseman was at it again. Yeah, who could imagine, the things that he does on draft day just leaves you utterly just shocked the way he's able to maneuver and improve this roster. When you look at these young players that he's acquired, what he's done is he's made this defense highly, highly, highly competitive and extremely young in a lot of ways as well, because he's got some players here that are going to be difference makers. You can kind of look at what we lost and look at, what we've gained and feel kind of good about, a lot of what we've gained in light of what we had to lose. For me personally, I think that, it's hard to replace a guy like Milton Williams. A guy like Josh Sweat has been around for so long and been such a part of, this organization having, won 2 Super Bowls. It's hard to see guys like that walk out of the building, but that's the nature of, winning Super Bowls. Those kind of things are going to happen. I like some of the things that we did. I like the versatility that we now have on the defensive side of the ball. You guys are here, some of the breakdowns. Ray's will probably be a heck of a lot more in depth than mine is. But we've got some versatile guys that can do a myriad of different things, and some guys who have replaced some guys. I would love personally to have seen the Eagles draft an edge guy that was in the 6'5" to 6'4" range, 265 to 280 pounds, a pass rusher. We've got a lot of smaller size guys on the edge, and that kind of worries me a little bit in the NFL, who has seen a resurgence in a lot of ways of the run game. If I'm an offensive coordinator, I'm running at our edges because that's where we're the smallest. Just double down, pull, double down, pull, try to get outside, try to get it, off tackle, because I think that's the one area where, we have speed and we got quickness, but we lack size. Without any further ado, we're going to start at round 1. I'm going to bring in my good friend. You guys know him as the Diddy, Ray Didinger. First off, Ray, let's deal with the elephant in the room. A lot of controversy going on through the first 3 days of the draft, particularly with Shador Sanders. Curious to see, what your thoughts are and how you felt about, his precipitous slide all the way to the 5th round.
Yeah, that was surprising to me, Seth. I certainly didn't expect him to still be on the board on day 3. I didn't buy into the idea that he was going to be a top 3 pick. Some people had him at number 1. Mm-hmm. I didn't. A lot of people had him going to the Giants at 3. I didn't. I thought there was a really good chance that he was going to fall out of the 1st round. And I was telling people that the day of the draft. Don't be surprised if by the time they close up shop tonight that he's still on the board. Now, I didn't expect that to be the case after Friday's round. I didn't expect him to still be there day 3, but he was. So the fact that he fell, that wasn't surprising. The fact that he fell to round 5, to me, was surprising. But the situation he steps into in Cleveland is very fluid. I mean, you look at their quarterback room right now, there's still a really good chance he's going to play this year, because their quarterbacks, I mean, they don't really have a quarterback right now. I mean, they got Joe Flacco. They got Kenny Pickett for the Eagles. They got Deshaun Watson. I mean, who knows what his status is. And the kid they drafted before Sanders, and then they got Sanders. I mean, they got 5 quarterbacks in search of an answer. And it wouldn't be a huge shock to me if Sanders sees the field this year.
Ray, there's been so many conspiracy theories. I posted some things on social media. Some people came back at me, for, some of the things that I said. You know, while a guy is ranked, in the top two of quarterbacks, throughout the entire year, throughout the entire draft process, to just completely fall as far as he fell. Um, I was really kind of taken aback by that a little bit. I really was, because some of the things that you begin to hear, and I think is detrimental not only to draft positions as far as players are concerned, but how the outside world, especially in the world of social media, perceives a guy. Um,
Mhm.
you heard everything from, he's a cancer, to he's a me guy, he's not a team guy. That's certainly not what we heard leading up to the draft. And it's certainly not what guys like Sean Payton and Tom Brady had to say about him. Certainly you would think that those things would come to the forefront way before, you get to the draft. And then you have the anonymous, assistant coach who talks about, the interview process and how that looked and how that felt and how that kind of grew legs the entire time. Um, in a lot of ways, Ray, this pick by the Cleveland Browns took me back to 2014 with Michael Sam. I think that everybody knew. I kind of got the sense, listen, the kid was the Big 12 Defensive Player of the Year, but when he came out, that kind of changed the dynamics. And be that as what it may, people have their opinions one way or the other. But when they got to the seventh round, I got the sense, Ray, that the league instructed the Rams to take him, and he didn't really last but one season, in the NFL. When I look at the body language of the head coach and the GM when this pick is made in the fifth round, neither one of them seem like they're awfully thrilled about what the guy that they just picked. Most organizations are happy with the guys that they pick, and they show that in their emotions. It felt to me like the NFL picked up the phone and said, "Hey, we need to draft this guy. Enough of the slide, enough of everything that went on." And I kind of felt like that's what happened. And then when you think about it, everybody's talking about, the drama, with Dion not, saying that there's certain teams he's not going to play for. And Dion's involvement, and no organization wants, Dion calling or showing up. And I'm like, this guy's a full-time head coach at the University of Colorado. He's not showing up anywhere during the season. He's going to be coaching his team. Now, he's advising his son, and rightfully so, because that's his son. And you can talk about his confidence or cockiness or arrogance or entitlement or whatever it is that you want to call it, Ray. But leading up to the draft, we never heard any of these things. We never heard any of these narratives that began to be thrown around and how it affected, in my opinion, where he was drafted. And be that as it may, listen, I get it. Every organization wants to win. They're going to take the best player, that they want to. But I think the meritocracy of the National Football League and the optics of this took a major hit this year.
Well, the optics for sure. I think that, and you're right, that by day 3, he had become the only thing that anybody was talking about.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he sucked all the oxygen out of that room on day 3, because that's all anybody could talk about. You could take either side of the argument; it didn't matter. The fact is, the argument was him, and he had at that point he had totally overshadowed the rest of the process. And probably the people in the league office, starting with the commissioner on down, were probably a little uncomfortable about that. Now, did they actually pick up the phone and call the Cleveland Browns and say, draft this guy? I don't know, but it definitely seemed like there was nothing that anybody else wanted to talk about. There was nothing anyone else wanted to write about after day 2 than him. I didn't hear any real negative stuff about him until really like almost on the eve of the draft, like the last 48 hours, you started hearing some stuff. And a lot of it had to do with, like you were talking about, the interviews and the individual workouts. And then in a couple of them, he had come off as, I don't want to say cocky, but entitled is sort of the word. There are a couple of teams I heard said that he seemed disinterested. He sat down with them. He seemed bored. He seemed like he was looking at his watch, like, when's this going to be over? When they asked him to go up to the board to do a little chalk talk, that he sort of balked at that. The last round of interviews did not seem to go well. And listen, I kind of understand it, Seth. I mean, at that point, he might have just been interviewed out, you know? I mean, he might have just been through it so much. I could almost see a player saying, look, either draft me or don't, okay? Do I really have to keep going, answering the same questions over and over again? You got the tape. Can't you draw your own? I could see where maybe a guy would get that way. I thought it was real interesting when the Giants brought him back for like a last workout. They had a private workout with him, and then like 3 days before the draft, they brought him back for another one, for another workout and another interview session. And that was when the talk really started that, hey, the Giants they might be really taking him at number 3. I didn't see it that way. I thought it made it less likely that they were going to take him at 3. Because all the other stuff that people are saying about him, all of that internal, behind the scenes, unnamed sources kind of stuff, I kind of put that to the side. And I just look at what I saw on film. And what I saw on film was a quarterback who, one thing he was accurate. I mean, in terms of just the one quality that a quarterback has to have above all else in today's NFL is you got to be accurate throwing the ball. If you're not accurate throwing the ball, then you just can't play and win in the NFL. Not in today's league, you can't. And the accuracy he had. The other thing that I thought stood out to me was just his physical toughness. I mean, some of the beatings that he took. I mean, he got sacked almost 90 times the last 2 seasons. Some of it was on him. I mean, some of it was just flat. He held the ball too long sometimes. Mm-hmm. I mean, he just did. I mean, there was no getting around that. I mean, some of it was on him, but some of it was also the play of his offensive line. I saw one sports writer out that way described that his offensive line afforded him all the protection of a shower curtain. I thought that was actually a pretty good description because that's how it looked a lot of times. And so he was playing under that kind of duress a good portion of the year. And he took a lot of big hits, but he never backed down. So the toughness, the competitiveness was certainly there. The negative side of it was I was a little bit surprised that he wasn't more mobile. He was really more of a pocket passer. Not a bad thing, but he didn't afford you the kind of mobility I think some people expected. And the other part was I thought his arm strength was average. I wouldn't say it was poor, but it was just average. I had him in my grading system. I had him as a third round pick, and in a not particularly strong quarterback class. But I just thought, based on the traits that I saw him being like a second day, either late 2 or early 3 pick. I certainly didn't see him as a 5. But hey, now he gets an opportunity to go to Cleveland, a team that has been looking for a quarterback forever, and with a coach in Kevin Stefanski, who's a very good coach working with quarterbacks. So, I think he has an opportunity to find a silver lining here. But it's going to be up to him to come in and play and compete. But I think he's going to make the team. And really, Seth, as I was saying, looking at the Browns and looking at the quarterback situation that they have right now, it would not shock me not only that he makes this team, but that he's playing before the year's out.
Okay, last question, and then we'll put this to rest. Everybody wants to know what your thoughts are, on the Eagles draft picks. Where did you have him ranked among the top 5 quarterbacks? Because, certainly, you had, Dart jumped over him, Schuff jumped over him, and you had Gabriel, who actually went in the 3rd round to the same team. Certainly none of those guys in most of the mock drafts, in most of the evaluations, were evaluated above him.
Right. I had him fourth.
Okay.
I had him fourth. Like everybody else, I had Ward number one. I had Dart number two. I had Milroe, the quarterback from Alabama, number three, and I had Sanders number four.
Okay.
I think Dart. At this point, a week or so ago, if somebody had said that he's going to be a surprise, people might have said, "Really?" I think, but now because he went in the first round, then people are sort of paying a little more attention. But I think he's quite good. I think he's got a lot of ability, and in the right situation, we'll see if New York is the right situation. But I think he's got the ability to be a winning quarterback in the NFL. I do. I liked him a lot. And this quarterback crop was not terrific. It wasn't as good as last year's. And Lord knows, and the history of the draft will tell you this, that there are more swings and misses at the quarterback position than almost any other position on the board. I mean, it's so funny, a position that is watched so intently and scouted so intently and means so much to every franchise is you got to have that guy to have a chance to win, is that so many teams are wrong in picking quarterbacks. It just shows you how hard it is, the difference in the move from college football to pro football. It's a big jump at every position for every player, but it just seems to be bigger at the quarterback position. And we'll see. We'll see. I mean, listen, Ward went number one, and he's got work to do. He's got a lot of talent, but I mean, he's not a guy that's going to step right in right away and look like a veteran quarterback. I mean, he was number one, and he's got a lot of work to do. So you can imagine what the rest of the guys are.
Well, Ray, I mean, this is one of the reasons why I'm not a big draft guy. I know somebody's got to do it. The mock drafts all over the place, but we just don't know what these teams are going to do. They're so unpredictable. We don't know where these players are going to fall. You know who the major players are, but it's hard to gauge where these players are going to fall and where these teams are going to take them, especially when you look at, how teams are willing to move around. My goodness. Jacksonville moving up to 2 and giving up what they gave up, to go and get, a playmaker. But let's get into the Eagles, Ray, because I think we knew that this is going to be a defense-heavy draft for the Eagles, coming off a Super Bowl victory and taking into consideration, what the Eagles lost. The Eagles trade, maybe they were afraid that somebody was going to move up and take Jihad Campbell. So they make the trade with the Kansas City Chiefs to swap one spot, giving up a fifth rounder, giving up a fifth rounder to go along with it. 6'3", 235 pounds, 4'5", 40, speed, great instincts, great versatility for this defense because from what I can see, you can play him inside or outside, so it creates a lot of competition. If somebody's not getting it done on the inside, you can pop him inside. If you need him as a rotational player on the outside, you can move him outside. Seems like a tremendous player. Give me your thoughts on him and, how you figure he fits, as a Philadelphia Eagle moving forward.
Yeah, I liked him a lot. I was surprised that he wasn't taken earlier. I know that's what everybody always says. Can't believe he wasn't taken earlier. I felt that way about this guy. I mean, played at a very high level, high visibility games. I mean, everybody saw Alabama, so everybody saw this guy. He was nobody's sleeper, and I thought a real quality player. And so I thought that he would certainly be a top 20 pick. I mean, I thought he would be in there. When it passed 20 and then got to the mid-20s, I was surprised. And it was only then that I started thinking in terms of, hey, he might be here for the Eagles. When the first round started, I wasn't thinking in terms of Jihad Campbell coming to Philadelphia. I wasn't. I thought that, I knew that the Eagles they're 32, but they have the wherewithal to trade up, obviously. But I thought, where Campbell's going to be, where Campbell's going to go, it's probably in the teens, and I don't know if the Eagles want to pay the price it's going to take to move up that far. So I wasn't even thinking in terms of him coming to Philadelphia. Once he got past 20, and certainly once he got past 25, that's when I started thinking, hey, they might have a shot at this guy. And then I started getting excited about it because I really think he's a good player. The only thing everything you said about him is true. 6'4"-ish, 235, 4.5 speed, which for that size is really good. Everything about him was positive. The only thing that I think was a concern was the injury, was the torn labrum, and the fact that he had surgery in March. I think that some teams might have been scared off about that. Not that you can't recover from that injury, but it's a late surgery. When's he going to be ready to work? When's he going to be ready to play? When can we get him on the field? I think some teams sort of backed away for that reason. Now, certainly the Eagles did their homework, and at the combine, their medicals went over him. When they talked to him later, I'm sure they tested him again, and they felt comfortable with it. And I think it was a great pick. When it came up and I saw the Eagles make the move to trade with the Chiefs to jump up one spot, I began to think it's probably for him because there had to be other teams that were interested at that point. But you take a player, and you mentioned it, with his kind of versatility and it's obvious when you watch him, his very high football IQ, his instincts, his ability to recognize a situation, read the play, and find the football, all of those things. You take a player like that and you hand him to a guy like Vic Fangio with his ideas of how to utilize his personnel, and as the coaches say, put him in a position to succeed. I think he's going to come here, and I think he's going to do really well. Now, where will the Eagles use him? I think their biggest need coming into the draft was probably edge rusher, because you lose Sweat, you lose Graham. I think you needed to fortify the edges, and I think he can be that. I think he can put his hand on the ground and be an edge rusher. But I also see him in the hands of a creative coach being a multi-dimensional kind of guy that you can move all around the defense, much in the way, almost like a Micah Parsons kind of player. I think if you look at the way, for what the Cowboys drafted him to be and for how they utilize him now, it's very, very, very different. I think they drafted him with the idea he was going to be one thing, and then they saw all the things that he could do, and now he's all over the field making plays. Campbell, to me, is a similar kind of player, and I would assume that Vic Fangio will probably do the same kind of thing with him, where he'll have him on the edge in certain situations, but he'll also line him up off the ball. And one of the things you see is, out of a two-point stance, he is a good blitzer. He is really good at finding the gaps and getting through the A gap and getting pressure on the quarterback. He can really do that. So he can bring you pressure from the edge, but he can also bring you pressure on blitzes and delayed blitzes from the inside. Really good player, and I think a guy who's going to come in here and play a lot and play very well for the Eagles right away.
The next guy, Ray, it's no surprise, but it is a surprise. I can't remember the last time, since I guess, Sidney Brown, I think the Eagles drafted him in the third round. They go and they take a safety, Andrew Makuba, out of Texas. Little on the short side, 5'11", 186 pounds, 4'4", 40. Good speed. He's a ball hawk, an absolute hitter. A younger version, in my opinion. I think when Howie made the decision to move on from C.J. Gardner-Johnson, you need a tone setter on the back end of your defense. Now, Reed Blankenship will hit you, but Reed isn't, the fastest, the quickest. Like, he can get himself in trouble sometimes by being out of position or eyes in the wrong place, situations like this. But this Makuba kid, he kind of reminds me of a CJ Gardner-Johnson. He will hit you. He's a ball hawk. When you watch how Texas utilized him in film, Ray, they move him all over the place.
Mm-hmm.
You see him in the slot every once in a while. You see him rotate the safety every once in a while, and they drop him in the box. He's a willing and violent tackler. Kind of like CJ Gardner-Johnson was. And I think that, they kind of looked at him on film and said, hey, we can get a cheaper version, a younger version, of a CJ Gardner-Johnson in this kid. And he looks like a fit. Now, I'm a little surprised because, I'm thinking, hey, you never have enough good players. But you make the move with CJ Gardner-Johnson, and the thought is that Sidney Brown's going to be the guy that gets the opportunity. But this is going to create some massive playing time issues because you only have 2 safeties on the field. Now, you can go to your sub packages where you go 3 safeties, and then he's an asset. But the kind of competition that's going to create for playing time, it'll come down to, hey, how quickly can this kid assimilate, pick up, decipher the information that Vic Fangio wants him to be able to get done?
Yeah, I think that everything you said is true. I think that I was a little bit surprised. I was looking at most of the because I had Makuba as a second-round pick too, and that was about where I thought his grade fell. I was a little bit surprised when I looked around to other scouting services and other rating services that had his overall grade as more of like a 4th rounder. I thought he was better than that. And I think the Eagles got themselves a pretty good player here. He does have really good speed. He combines. He can run the stopwatch stuff. I mean, he's 4.47, I think, which is plenty fast for a safety. But in addition to being just stopwatch fast, he is instinctively fast, which makes him play even faster. If you watch him play, and you're right, I mean, Texas used him all over the field. He played some of the 2 high. He sometimes played single high. Sometimes he came down and played up closer to the line of scrimmage. But the one thing that was consistent wherever he was when the ball was snapped, he was always gone in the right place. His instincts were very, very keen. Which is one of the things that you have to have as a safety. A safety has to be intuitive. A safety has to recognize stuff right away to get to the ball and make a play. Some guys have it, some guys don't. Coaches will try to coach it. You can probably coach it to a certain degree, but certain players just have it. They just do. I mean, you've played with them, you know who I'm talking about. This kid, to me, seems to have it. Had 5 interceptions last year playing at Texas, and that's a lot in a college football season these days. And the only thing that concerned me was I just thought that he looked I don't want to say frail. Not frail's not the right word, but he did look slim. Mm-hmm. He did look slim. He didn't have like a Brian Dawkins kind of body. He didn't have that kind of thick frame that you see in a lot of today's safeties. And I would suspect that coming up here, they're probably going to ask him to spend a little time in the weight room, maybe get a little bit stronger, just for the sake of making it through this long season now. Right. Which the commissioner is now talking about making even longer. We all knew that was coming, but here it is. But just to see him to get through the season, I think he's going to have to get a little bit stronger. His physical makeup to me is my only concern. But as far as his ability to play the position, and the fact that when you lose a guy like Gardner-Johnson, I mean, one of the things that he did was he was a takeaway player. You know, I mean, he got you turnovers. He got you takeaways. And, for when the Eagles, the year the Eagles didn't have him, they missed that.
Mm-hmm.
That other guy back there in the secondary, and Blankenship has become, a pretty solid player who always seems to know what to do, and he's a good tackler, good solid tackler. But that other safety needs to be, and I'll use your term, the ball hawk. He needs to be the guy that's around the football and is going to get you the takeaways. And I think this kid can do that.
The other thing, what's intriguing about him, you talked about, instinct. I think that sometimes, Ray, preparation, allows a player to be instinctual. I don't know him well enough. I guess, we'll find out more as things progress, see where he's slotted, see how he gets through training camp, but I know from experience that the more you prepare yourself, the more instinctual you are because you're anticipating, what's coming. And a lot of what you saw with him is just anticipatory stuff. Like in the college playoff, that interception he had down the red zone against ASU was just phenomenal. Like he was kind of out of position, but he knew where the receiver was going, and he got himself in the throwing lane and took that ball away. That's a huge play because if ASU scores there, Texas probably loses that game. There's just no doubt about it.
Yeah, I remember seeing. I can't remember which game it was, but he made a play on a 9 route, a deep throw down the sideline, where he came from the other hash all the way across the field, and got his hand on the ball and knocked the ball away. Now that's, there aren't a whole lot of guys that can cover that kind of ground, and part of it was he just recognized it immediately. He just knew exactly where he was going. He read the quarterback's eyes, saw the play developing, and he just took off from one hash, got there, broke the play up, and that's it's plays like that that just jumps off the screen at you. That a guy had that kind of instinct and that kind of speed to be able to make that kind of play. And, that's the kind of play you're going to have to be able to make if you're going to be a top-notch safety in the NFL.
Right. Well, Ray, a lot of these guys, I've seen safeties, and cornerbacks over the year. I can remember being in a game with Eric Allen, and we were playing against the Redskins at the time. Pressure situation, 4th down on the goal line. We know they're going to pass the ball. They have to pass the ball because they haven't been able to run on us all day long. And Eric Allen had Ricky Sanders in coverage. The ball is snapped. He leaves Ricky Sanders because he knows that Mark Rippon is going to throw this ball to I'm trying to remember the other guy's name.
Gary Clark.
Gary Clark. He knows that Gary Clark is his pressure time guy. That's the guy he's going to go to. You know what I'm saying? So he leaves this guy wide open and runs over and knocks the ball down. It's amazing, when you see some of these guys that have that kind of preparation and some of that instinct, some of that instinctive, sixth sense. You see it with Ed Reed when you watch, film. There's times where he's supposed to be in the deep third and he's over on a half somewhere because he just knows where the ball is going. And Brian Dawkins was the same exact way. He knew what was coming, so he was always in position to make big plays. So that's always something great, to have in a safety and a cornerback to have that, that level of preparation and instinct. The next guy, the Eagles trade completely out of the 3rd round, for additional picks. And they pick in the 4th round with the 111th pick, Ty Robinson, 6'6", 288, 4'8", 40. Just got a motor, fundamentally sound, aggressive, adds some depth at the tackle position, but can also play a 4 or 5 technique. And it wouldn't surprise me, Ray, in certain situations when they need a little more size on the edge to see them in running situations, kick him out on the edge and take some of these lighter edge guys, out of the game. I talked about it in the beginning of the show. That's one of my main concerns is we've got a lot of linebackers in my day size that are playing defensive end and on the edge, and that concerns me in a league where we're trying, with a resurgence of the running game last year. But I really like this guy, and he's got a nasty streak about him too.
Yeah, I figured you'd like that. I like this pick too. I was a little surprised. I mean, I didn't think that Robinson would be around at pick 111. He to me he graded out a lot higher than that. So good work by the Eagles for getting him there. I like a lot of things about him. I like his size. I like what you just said. He's a guy that plays hard. He's got an edge to him, which I kind of like. He also can do a lot of different things along the line. He's not a one gap kind of player. I've seen him play the 3 technique, but I've also seen him play 5. I've seen him play on the edge. I've also seen him on the nose. I've seen him. One of the things that I think that he does very well, or at least he did at Nebraska, was he can hold the point on a double team. He can hold the point of attack on a double team. He is strong enough to be able to do that. And I could see the Eagles in certain fronts moving him outside if they feel like they need a bigger physical presence on the outside. I think he could do that. You mentioned at the top of the show the loss of Milton Williams. That's a loss. He was a young player that was really coming on, and I think he's going to have a really good career. And replacing him is not going to be easy. But they replaced him. I think they replaced him with a guy in Robinson that's going to be able to come in and not be that right away, but get there pretty quick. And when you look at the tackle position that you've got now, you've got Carter, who's already an elite player. You've got Davis, and now you add this guy. That's a pretty strong rotation they've got in there. And I think that to get this guy in the 4th round, I didn't think he would be there, but I thought the Eagles were fortunate to find him there because he's a quality player at a position of need.
I'm excited about Moro Jomo as well, Ray, because, in the limited amount of time that he got to play last year, I thought he played extremely well.
He got better and better. I agree. The more he played, the better he played.
And I think with a complete offseason, getting himself in shape now, understanding what it's going to take and understanding that, hey, you're going to get more reps than you probably got last year. I look for him to step up his game and be ready to, to contribute more in the offseason. But I'm in love with, I love versatility. And when these last 2 picks gives the Eagles a lot of versatility on the defensive side of the ball. Next kid, Mac McWilliams, cornerback out of UCF, 5'10", 190 pounds, 4'4", 40. Another versatile player, can play either the corner. I watched film on him. He plays the corner and the slot.
Right.
Very good and willing tackler. This is another player that diagnoses things very quickly, right? He never seems to be out of position, seems to know what's coming, seems to be prepared. Another player with great versatility. And as we start to, go up in rounds, you have to start thinking about how some of these players factor in as special teams players.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I was just looking at the notes that I had on him. I wrote down here that I found him to be a good man-to-man defender. It looked like depending on what kind of coverage you're playing, there were a lot of corners in this draft, a lot of defensive backs in this draft that I saw that were zone players in college, and I felt could probably be zone players if they went to a team that played predominantly zone in the NFL. They'd probably be okay. If they were put in defenses where they were going to have to play a lot of man, they might be in trouble. McWilliams, to me, was a guy who I thought had the flexibility to be able to do both. And on occasions when he had to play, on occasions when at UCF he had to play man, he played it very well. I like the fact I thought he was a solid tackler. He looked like he was physical. And also, and the other thing I note is that he looked equally comfortable playing the border and also playing the slot. I think that he's a guy that's not necessarily a one. You can only plug him here and let him play there. Wherever you need to use him, I think he can play. So yeah, I feel like you felt that it was a really good pick. And you lose Darius Slay, okay, you're going to have to replace him. And I think that this guy can step in and play. And also, I think very very early, certainly almost as a rookie, will be a key contributor on your special teams.
Well, I love what they're doing because they're creating so much competition, Ray. Of course you got, Ringo, which everyone's, who everyone's thinking is going to be the heir apparent. You still got Ricks. If he can put on a little bit of weight, I think that, he could be a factor. But you're going to have three young guys competing for a starting job.
And the veteran, and Adoree Jackson.
Oh, yeah. You're right.
The veteran that they signed as a free agent who's been around. And yeah, Howie said that in his final press conference when the draft was all over, when it was he and Nick were sitting at the table. And Howie said the thing that we wanted to create on this team was we wanted to create competition. We wanted to create competition across the board at every position. Look, we're the defending champs. Okay, everybody knows that. Everybody's gotten measured for their rings. All that stuff is nice. But you have to have that feeling of competition now. We can't allow ourselves to be complacent. We can't lose that hunger. And the way that you keep that going, and the teams that are able to win championships and then win them again, are teams that come into the next year with a certain degree of hunger. And the way you generate that is with good competition. And Howie said that's one of the reasons why he traded down to get additional picks, to bring in guys to training camp that'll create a competitive atmosphere. It made a lot of sense to me.
Yeah, a lot of people were losing their mind on social media, right? Because he kept trading and trading and trading. And like, well, at the end of the day, they wound up with, 10 picks when they started the draft, I believe, with what, 7?
Right.
So, okay, the next guy, Smile Mundon. So they go linebacker, 6'2", out of Georgia. You just knew that this draft wasn't going to go by without Howie getting him at least one Georgia dog. 224 pounds, a little on the small side for linebacker. 4.5 40. Pretty darn good speed, at the linebacker position. A very versatile piece, very good tackler, Ray. And it seems to me that Georgia used him a lot as a blitzer. Now, he didn't have a ton of blitzes, but a lot of the plays that I've seen, they brought him on delayed blitzes. They brought him off the edge. They brought him up the middle. They brought him from a myriad of different places, and he was pretty darn effective at it. They're just loaded at the linebacker position. So who wants to fight, for starting or playing time? But also, I give Howie a lot of credit again, creating competition, but also looking at special teams. I think the Eagles need to get faster from a special team standpoint. And you're seeing a lot of guys here 4.4, 4.5, linebacker at 4.5. This kid, he looks like he can be another piece, another chess piece that Vic Fangio can situationally use on the field. And he's good in coverage. He's good in coverage, and he's good in zone, getting in the zone, deciphering what's going up. And when he comes up and decides he's going to make a tackle, he doesn't miss too many tackles.
Yeah. Well, he's your breakdown on him is pretty good. He's a guy that went to Georgia. He wasn't a big recruit. He was not a big recruit coming out of high school. He went to Georgia as a defensive back. And once he got to Georgia, they felt like he was a little bit of an in-betweener, and they decided that they would try him. And they were pretty deep in the secondary. So they decided to try him and move him up at linebacker. And they really liked him at linebacker, and he seemed to thrive there. So when you watch him play now, you're right. He's a good blitzer. He seems to time it well, which is a big part of blitzing. You don't show it too soon. You don't come too late. You got to time it just right, and he has that feel to do that. But in situations where he has to play coverage, because his background is that of a defensive back, his coverage skills are very good. His ability to play his zone, he's very smart, knowing where to play the zone. He always seems to have the right depth. And I really like that versatility. You can do him a lot of different things. I mean, he is, even though he's not big, he is a good tackler. You mentioned he's a very good blitzer, but he still has the cover skills of a defensive back. And, and I think he's a real nice, versatile player who is going to come to camp, and nobody's going to be talking about him because he's sort of a middle of the draft kind of guy. He's not going to have a lot of attention, but I think the coaches are going to like him right away because he comes out of that Georgia system. They're well coached, they're well disciplined, and he has a pretty good toolkit. So I think he's a guy that I liked a lot. I thought he was a good pick, and as you said, if you knew that the draft was not, the 3 days of drafting was not going to go by without them going down to Athens, Georgia, and bringing somebody home, right? You knew it was going to happen, and this kid, like a lot of the other ones they've got here, is a good quality player who I think is going to come in and compete.
All right, the next guy, Drew Kendall, center guard, 6'4", 308, ran a 5 flat 40. Ray, I look at this kid. He is got great feet for a guy his size. I see, BC used him as a puller a lot from the center position. Kind of reminds me, of our past, future Hall of Fame center and the center that we got now. They can get out in space and move, and he can do all of that. Now he's got a little nasty streak in him, but I think that he has a skill set, and the fact that he can play either center or guard gives them the versatility. If you get an injury across the board, here's another one of these versatility pieces. It seems to me like the Eagles' idea about drafting, players now, because they've got players in situations where they know that they're solidified. The entire offensive line has been extended between last year and this year. So now you go and you get these pieces where, hey, if I got a guard down, I got 2 other guys that can step in right now. If I get a center down, I got 2 other possibilities that we can slide in there. It all depends on how they've been playing, how healthy they are, and how much of the offense they actually know, where you feel like we may have a little bit of downtick a little bit, but not a whole lot. So this kid, Kendall, when you watch him and you just watch him pull, there's not a whole lot of teams that even try to do that, right? And this kid did a lot of pulling, and he's got a little bit of nastiness in him too.
Yeah, and he's not small. I mean, he's 6'4", and he's about 310. So he's got some size. So if they decide to ask him to back up at guard, I think he can do that. And he just looks like he's had really good coaching all along. I mean, his footwork is really good. The positions of his hands are really good. He isn't fooled by anything that happens inside. Like if the defensive line stunts or loops, I mean, he knows where it's coming from, and he's always set up to take it. He looks like a guy who's thinks the game and can play the game. Not surprising. I mean, his dad was Pete Kendall, who played in the NFL for 13 or 14 years and was a good player. So I'm sure he's taught his son a lot. The kid grew up around the game, watching his father play, probably watched film with his father at home at night. And it's all there when he plays. And, the Eagles, I mean, I thought one of the things the Eagles did in this draft, even though it happened later, and I don't know how much people were paying attention, but they drafted 3 offensive linemen here who I think all of them can play. I really do. And I think that it's one of the things you knew that they were going to keep trying to feed that offensive line, make sure they had enough bodies on the offensive line, give Coach Jeff Stoutland a lot of people to work with. And I think this draft, and starting off with Kendall, but we're going to get to the 2 tackles later, have enough ability that they're going to come in here. And I think they're viable players. I think they're all going to see the field for this team because I think they're all good players.
All right. And the Eagles wouldn't be the Eagles without, adding to their quarterback factory. Kyle McCord out of Syracuse, quarterback, 6'3", 218 pounds, 4'9", 40, very decisive, very accurate, great touch on balls that need to be thrown with touch. And the thing that impressed me the most, Ray, is when you watch him throw passes, he puts the ball in the right position for his receivers to catch it. Like, if he's throwing the back shoulder fade, that ball's on the back shoulder fade. Very rarely do you see him miss inside. If that ball needs to be, outside on a slot fade, that ball's on the outside where either his receiver is going to catch it or no one's going to get it. Now, I don't think anybody's really expecting a whole lot out of this kid. You trade for Dorian Robinson Thompson. You got Tanner McKee, who in week 18 proved that he's up to the task if they need him. I like the move for Thompson Robinson because I feel like the Eagles need to find that guy who has some of the skill sets that Jalen has so that when Jalen goes down, you don't have to change the entire offense. Tanner McKee, to me, that week 18 start was a showcase. And to be honest with you, Ray, I'm kind of shocked that the Eagles held on to him. I thought that they would use him as trade bait to be able to move up at all the teams that needed quarterbacks. The way he performed in that week 18 game, I just knew that Howie was going to deal him, before the draft or during the draft. But you got another developmental guy who's probably going to wind up being on the practice squad for the year, who's in a really good position to grow because that's what, the Eagles have been able to do with these young quarterbacks that they've drafted. They grow them and they trade them at some point, for draft capital or, for other players that they may need. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, McKee was a real find. It was a 7th round pick, total afterthought. Was not that highly thought of coming out of Stanford. Was just thought to be kind of okay. Draft him in the 7th round. I kind of thought, and I know some other people thought, training camp guy, camp arm, but a guy that's going to mature into a real competitive quarterback. Nah, not likely. He's proven to be a lot better than I thought. At camp you saw it. In preseason games you saw it. Every time he played well. But again, you're tempted to say preseason. But when he played the final week of the season, say what you will about the Giants in the final week of the season, it doesn't mean anything. The fact is he walked out there and played like a guy who belonged there. Mm-hmm. And does he have value around the league? Yeah, I think he does. So he could be a guy that at the end of this year that the Eagles could move. If McCord comes on and looks like he's the kind of player I think he's going to be, I think he's going to push for that job too. He's a local guy, South Jersey, went to St. Joe Prep, and transferred to Syracuse. And one thing about Syracuse, man, they threw the football. He had almost 600 attempts this year. They threw the ball. He has a big arm, and he can power the ball, but he does throw it with real touch. He's a very good passer, and he has that. He stands tall in the pocket. He'll stand in there and deliver the football. There's a lot to like about McCord. There really is. So I thought it was a really good pick. Especially getting him in the 6th round. I thought he might go a little bit higher than that. But giving a kid with that kind of talent a chance to play for his hometown team, I think it was a real good pick. And we'll get to see him play a lot this summer, and I think he's going to play well.
Well, I'm gonna kind of combine these next two picks, Ray, because you got both 6-rounders. One was picked 191, Miles Hinton, son of Chris Hinton, former player, a mountain of a man, 6'7", 323. I just think that he's probably a Jeff Stoutland project, and I kind of feel the same way about the 207th pick, the Cameron Williams kid out of Texas. Hinton went to Michigan, but he's 6'6", 317. And I look at both of these guys as potential projects. But I've heard some people say that if this Hinton kid was a little more developed, he could have potentially been an early round pick, but he's just raw, and needs, some work. And what better place, for two young, offensive tackles to come than to, Stoutland University.
Yeah, that is for sure. Again, I'm looking at my notes here. Hinton, and I saw his father play a lot. I mean, his father was a real good player, first-round draft pick. And the kid is enormous. Only gave up 1 sack this year. I think that he can. I think there's room for him to improve. One of the things I really liked about him when I'm evaluating players, I like to see how they play over the course of their season. I watch them all, but I really want to see how they play in the big games. I want to see how they play in the big games against the best competition. Because let's face it, that's what it's going to be like coming to the NFL.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, in the NFL, every Sunday is a big game, okay? There's no Division IIs up here. So when I'm evaluating the tape, I'll watch them all, but I'll pay particular attention to the big games. And the 2 best games that Hinton played last year were the games against Ohio State and Oregon. If you go back and look, he was good. He was pretty good right across the board. But the 2 games where it stood out were the games against Ohio State and Oregon. And that meant a lot to me. I think that showed me that this kid, against good competition, can rise to the occasion. I don't think he needs to keep working. He needs to develop, and I think with Jeff Stoutland, he will. But I think you got a lot to work with here. I feel kind of the same way about Williams. The difference with Williams is that he really was only a 1-year starter. And so he probably has a little bit more to learn. But boy, he is a powerful drive blocker. He really moves people on the run block. And I think that even though he was a tackle at Texas, I think he could be moved inside. And, the Eagles right now, they need a right guard. Right guard is going to be one of those open competition jobs. And Green will be a competitor for it, and Steen will be a competitor for it because he's been here. And Keegan will probably be in the mix. But don't be surprised if Williams if they don't do what they did with Becton last year, which is take a guy who was always a tackle and give him a chance to compete at guard. Because when I saw the way he could drive block and the way he could move for a big man, I think he could make the move to guard. So, those are 2, along with Kendall, the center, those are 3 young offensive linemen that I think have a lot of potential that can be developed by a really good coach like Jeff Stoutland.
All right, Ray, we rounded out with a Virginia Tech outside linebacker, 6'2", 258, 4'6", 40. And I'm going to let you break him all the way down. He's the only guy that I didn't get a chance to really evaluate in totality and look at some film. So fill our guests in, Ray, on what you had on him.
Yeah, well, you pretty much covered it there. 6'2", I have him at 258, 4'6" and change, 40. I actually thought that I was a little surprised to see him hang around on the board as much as he did. The guy had 25 and a half sacks the last 2 seasons.
Wow.
So I thought that he would. I certainly, the fact that he was available on the third day, maybe not that surprising. I mean, considering there's some concerns about his size, he is on the smaller side, but he certainly was a productive player. And so, at the very bottom of your draft, why not? I mean, take a shot at him. I mean, the Eagles came into this draft, and we all said they need edge rushers. Well, here you got this kid there at the bottom of the board, and that's the one thing he does. Now, when you watch him on tape, can he get to the quarterback? Yes, he can. Does he have some issues against the run? Yeah. His size can be a problem there. And if you want to run the ball at him, sometimes he has trouble getting off a block. At his size, that's not surprising. But, I mean, he can get better at it. But the ability to rush the passer is something that the more I've watched football, the more I'm convinced that that's just kind of innate. You know, I mean, there's certain guys that just know how to do it. You know, they just have a feel for it. And some of it is the measurables. Some of it is he big enough? Is he fast enough? What's his 40 time? What's his takeoff? But some of it is just, okay, you can have all that, but then not know or understand the technique all that well to make it work for you. And there are other people who just have a feel for it and know how to do it and look natural doing it. And this kid is sort of like that. He's a little bit undersized, as I said, but there's a lot to work with there. And for a team that's looking to beef up their edge rush, I think he's going to be in that mix.
Did I forget to say the kid's name? Antoine Powell Ryland?
Yeah.
Yeah. You know what I feel comfortable, Ray, with in closing here is the fact that, you know, the Eagles have made a shift, this whole shift to Vic Fangio and the type of coaches that he's brought in and the way that this team, you know, went from 31st in defense the previous year to Super Bowl champions the next year and in the top 5 in almost every category. Number 1 across the board almost in defense last year. That gives me a level of comfort with a lot of these players that not only do they bring their own talents to the table, but they're going to get some damn good coaching. You know, especially when you're talking about a guy like Ryland and you look at the leap that Nolan Smith took last year. You look at Jalen Hunt, you know, as a rookie that gets on the field and all of a sudden, you know, is a contributor. If this guy wants it, and that's what it comes down to each and every one of them, right? If they want it, they got the coaching to get better. That's not necessarily the case everywhere you go because not every team has good coaches. And I think that some of the misses that we've had on offense and defense over the last 10 years, you can kind of point at some of those players not having the type of coaching that was necessary for them to elevate their potential and their talent. I think that that's completely the opposite of what we're seeing, not only on the defensive side of the ball, but on the offensive side of the ball, because you've got so much talent over there, you know, that it's almost impossible for them not to perform and not to perform well.
Seth, I agree with you 200% on this. I mean, you know, in my years when I was at the newspaper traveling more than I do now, I went around and I saw all the teams and I watched all the teams practice. And one of the things that shocked me was how little coaches in the NFL do day to day working on players' fundamentals. Mm-hmm. You know, I mean, we all see in high school, we all know every day on the practice field, it's about teaching. It's about coaches teaching kids how to play, improve their technique. No, you don't have your feet like that. Put your feet like this. Use your hands like this. Teaching the fundamentals. It's a daily thing in high school. It's a daily thing in college because you got these players and every day you're trying to make them better, trying to get them to be as good as they can be. When you get to the NFL, it just seems like the coaches kind of give that stuff up. They figure they're here. This is what they are. We'll just teach them the system. We'll teach them the plays, and that'll be it. The individual skills, that to me, which is the lifeblood of being a good football player, it's sort of like, yeah, you get that in high school, you get that in college, but you get to the NFL, no, it's all about the system. No, it's all about the fundamentals. It never stops being about the fundamentals. But so often on the practice fields in the NFL, that stuff they don't pay nearly enough attention to it. But this, I agree with you, this coaching staff really does. This coaching staff, when you watch the practices, when you watch a training camp, you look at the level of teaching that goes on, and you look at the way some of these young players have developed here, and now you have another bunch of good young players coming in now that'll get the same kind of coaching. I mean, it's one of the reasons why the Eagles right now are one of the elite teams in the NFL and figured to be for a while.
Well, my friend, we're in lockstep because I think that technique and fundamentals are the lifeblood of development. And when you don't pay attention to it, you're asking for trouble. It's one of the most frustrating things, when I spent, that training camp interning up in Buffalo, Rex Ryan's last year, is that, the technical and fundamental aspects of it. And I don't know, Ray, maybe it's the fact that, you got limited time now. You're on the clock from the second that you get on the field. You don't have, really have two-a-days. The players are, in country club mode because, they know they're only going to hit 4 or 5 times in the entire training camp, but it was very frustrating to me because it was the lifeblood of my development, working on technique and fundamentals all the time. And if my technique and fundamentals begin to slide, the coaches addressed it. We even had fundamental technique and fundamental practices where we weren't even talking about anything schematically. The first half of the practice, the only thing we were working on, hand placement, foot placement, where's your eyes, reading the blockers, all of those types of things, because it allows your skill sets to just be on display in such a way where you don't think about it. Like my mind, if I'm in a game, Ray, I'm thinking strategy. The last thing I'm thinking about is my hand in the right place or is my feet are in the right place because they've been trained to be there. They've been trained to do the right thing. And I think sometimes when you don't see players develop, it's because they lack that. It's not that they don't have the talent and they don't have the ability. You don't get to the NFL if you don't have the intangibles. But it's the fundamentals and the technique that takes you to another level. And especially as a player, if you don't have the wherewithal and you don't have the thought capacity to say, well, if I'm not getting it here, I got to get it somewhere, and spend the time in the offseason finding that person that can get you there, then you're not going to develop and be the player that you want to be. My friend, it's always a pleasure talking ball with you. We're all anticipatory of, what this team is going to look like next year and this Super Bowl window that we're in. And, how everything is going to look from, offense with a new coordinator again and a defensive coordinator that came in and worked magic and brought so much pride to the city of Philadelphia. Curious to see how these draft picks are going to pan out. You can pick them, but they got to show up and they got to get the job done. As always, it's a pleasure talking with you, having you on the show. Thank you. Say hello to Maria for us, okay?
I absolutely will, Seth. Always a pleasure to be with you. See you soon, man. Take care. Bye-bye.
Take care. All right, folks, that's a wrap. I don't know when we're going to do this again. Probably when the Eagles start OTA and we start to get some information, some news coming out. Not a whole lot going on. Maybe I'll do a show next week to talk about, some of the undrafted free agents that the Eagles signed, as well as, probably, go over some of the free agent signings and how, all of this meshes together, the draft picks, the undrafted free agents, along with the free agent signing during the free agency period. But I'm out. Go Birds. As usual, be good to each other, take care of each other, and make sure, most importantly, you love each other. I'll see you, if not next week, soon. Go Birds.